Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're watching this presentation across the globe. My name is Edge Pereira. Uh, when we are going to talk today about why Office 365 is making data protection cool again, which is a very dry and sometimes boring topic. So I guess I'm gonna try to put a little bit of pizzazz into the content. So moving next, our agenda for today, we're gonna do a little bit of an introduction of myself, and then we're gonna discuss uh, the impact of data breaches in the current businesses, and then we're gonna discuss techniques for data loss prevention offered by Office 365. And then we're going to discuss how can we send encrypted email communications using Office 365 as well. We're going to talk about one or two real stories for data leakage that happened in the wild and how it affected uh, those businesses. And we're going to talk about the importance of training and compliance, which is a very key point across the whole topic of protection. We do have a few demos to go through it, so just to keep the subject interesting, we're gonna play around with two very specific demos. And one of my goals with this presentation is that you guys are aware on how to at least set up a basic DLP, which is a data loss prevention uh, rule in your organization. So it's going to be very simple. You guys are going to see that once you know how to do it, it's not too complicated, and then you can move on from there. But those two things are my goals for today. So at the end of this session, you guys are going to be uh, properly empowered to apply a set of rules and make your data communications a little bit uh, secure. So as I said, my name is Edge Pereira. Uh, I've been working with Office 365 for a few years already. I'm a SharePoint architect, and I do quite a few public speaking gigs um, whenever I can to talk about data protection, Office 365, or even if I have to teach kids how to code. I'm also one of the mentors in my local neighborhood for the code.org project. And I have three kids, and it's one of my passions to uh, promote and propagate the culture of STEM for young kids, especially girls. I have a girl, and she's already a programmer, so good on you. Uh, on the side, you can see my contact details, my Twitter, my Facebook, my LinkedIn. So I'm gonna skip that. You guys, I'm sure you guys gonna be able to find me easily after this session. And a little bit about me. So as you can see, I'm from Australia. I was born in Brazil, and those two countries they have a lot of similarities actually. I play with my friends that I say that Brazil is like Australia, that it needs to make happen. So you see, so in Australia you have those dangerous animals. In Brazil we have the same. And also I'm a big Lego fan. So I try to put a few of my Lego collection pictures on the presentation just to make a little bit of a different and exciting this presentation. So let's define what is cool. Uh, one of the things that I think is cool, for example, is this picture exemplifies really well what I think what is cool. Cool is you see here is the space station, and then we have the Endeavour. So often you only see a picture of the space station, or you only see a picture of the shuttle. You never get to see those two together. So when you get to step up a few steps back, and then you look at the big picture and see actually it's pretty cool thing, looking at a different perspective. And I think that's gonna be my goal uh, today, is to make sure you guys have a step back and look at the security in a different angle. Let's continue. Data breach is not a new thing. Mm. So it's happening since 2005. One of the biggest first cases was with American Online, and then we have TJ Maxx, Heartland, the famous WikiLeaks around 2009. It was actually a SharePoint data leakage. All those documents were stored in SharePoint back then. And then we have the famous PlayStation Network, where the files were saved in plain text files with passwords and everything. And then Living Social, Target, eBay, Morgan Chase, Home Depot, and the Anthem. And then most recently we have the big one, the famous one, which was the Ashley Madison website. So what we're gonna talk about this is that I want you guys to have a look at it. That data leakage protection is not only for amateurs. I mean, we are talking here about big companies, and those people they are supposed to have a very strict processes and policies and everything. But you see, those biggest leakages they come exactly from those people who are supposed to be driving the culture across the whole market. So it's not a small thing. And 2014 was a big year. So I'm gonna talk about in three slides here, and then I'll go back and set the scene. In 2014, uh, it was one of the turning points in the year of the data protection. Uh, about $1 billion of personal identifiable information was stolen, which are usernames with email addresses, um, SSN, date of birth, people's phone numbers, and etc. So all those data was stolen in 2014, and the criminals they started to favor that kind of personal information over financial data, bank records and credit card records, because they realized that personal information is much easier to sell and to leverage for other uh, businesses. And so, in one side was the amount of money made with the hacking, and the other one is the data, the losses due to the data breaches. Uh, Often said that people is the weakest link in any security chain. Uh, and that was very true when attacks were less sophisticated. But to be honest, today, no amount of education will stop any hacker from getting to your network. So just in 2014, $400 million amounted to losses for companies related to data breaches. And we have individual losses due to scammers as well. So it is a very interesting topic. That statistic is from Australia. So we are talking about people, those the famous email from Nigeria, or people uh, looking for love online. They target on a specific kind of age gap, that people looking for love online and try to send money to uh, lovers in other countries. Those people they never actually met each other, and they all have this relationship online. And so those scammers they ripped the Australian users of $80 million just in 2014. So, and this is because they were buying previously, those personal identifiable information before. Uh, they were buying and selling names, addresses, birthdays, bank accounts, and all those personal details to empower them and then to trick the, 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 uh, the naive Australian users in the market. So those three slides I wanted to talk to you because just in the first 9 months of 2014, um, after about 2,000 confirmed incidents, those criminals they managed to compromise almost a billion records. Like I said, so many of those incidents they were record-setting incidents, including 20 of them that were resulted in the compromise of more than a million records each. So that we are talking about big things. Those things happened in 2014, and we are in 2015 right now. And looking back, we can safely say that criminals had a tremendous run that year. Um, many people actually agree that a lot of change is coming in 2015 because of those things that happened in 2014, because the security nightmare. But quite frankly, 2015 is not being that secure year as we were expecting. People are still losing money, hackers are still being compromised, and criminals we still target no those they call the I hate that term from consulting, the low hanging fruits, but yeah, that's what they're gonna do. So, but it's important to notice that 2014 was a turning point for most security programs, and the CEOs and the CXOs they started to see the value in protecting data first. So, we have reports from companies like CSO Online that about 80% of the records exposed in 2014 they were all due to hacking, external influence coming to the systems. So these years, those security problems, they made clear for everybody in the markets that a very valuable lesson, which is when it comes to protecting the supply chain and offering awareness of training to staff and vendors. So this is very, very important because it doesn't matter how secure you make your systems, uh, it's a collaborative effort. And that's, I think, is going to be the main takeaway. We're going to talk about this towards the end of the presentation, that it doesn't matter the technology if you apply to the systems, you have to have the training, that compliance, that awareness, and that it has to be pervasive in the company for the staff, for vendors, for collaborations, and everybody else. However, to be fair to our security colleagues out there watching this, the attackers they were able to steal millions of customers' personal information, but they were not able to actually steal real financial data. And that's it's a really good thing that happens because this proves that the segmentation of the data it's a good idea. It has been for decades, and it's always gonna be good. And uh, it was actually considered as a nice to have thing, but now it's gonna be a more common thing across the organizations. And just to close this section, by far the most common record type exposed in 2014, which was the big year for data protection, there were passwords. After that were usernames, and then email addresses, and then the combo PII, which is the personal identifying information, which is the combination name, address, social security number, date of birth, phone number, etc. So when it comes to medical records and financial, like credit cards, actually the volume is very low, but it's still larger than the previous years. So it means that the criminals are starting to favor personal data over financial information because, as you saw, it's very easy to sell and to leverage. All right, so let's continue. We talk actually quite a little bit, so let's have a little bit of fun. Let's have a demo about data loss prevention using Office 365. How Office 365 can help us to protect our company. So first of all, we have a tenant that we set up for this conference. I'm gonna log into the tenant so you can see the data loss prevention area where you can set up your own rules in there. So here is the home page of our tenant. We're gonna come here to the admin session. Okay, that's all good. We are gonna go here down to exchange. And here we are gonna come to compliance management. So in one of the options here we see the data loss prevention. So let's have a look at it. So here is where we are going to create our policy rules to avoid, or at least to reduce the surface of a data leakage. So our main goal today is to make sure, let's create a scenario here, okay? Our main goal here is to make sure that we don't let credit card numbers being sent to people outside our organization. Okay, so that's a very simple rule and very easy to visualize rule. So that's what we're gonna do today. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna create a policy, right? Because that's related to email. So we came to the exchange area and then the loss prevention. We are gonna click on this little plus and then we're gonna choose new custom DLP policy. So here we're gonna give a name, and it can be any name here. You can change later. And then we have this little thing here called enable or disabled. So enable means that as soon as you create that policy, it is already it come to effect to all the users in your organization. If it is disabled, it's something that you are setting up as you progress, and then at some point you do a rollout project, for example, and then you get that and you make it enabled at your own convenience. And also we have the mode of the DLP policy. It can be enforce, test with tips, and test without the tips. So enforce, it means that the policy will be acting immediately upon creation. And test is when you are trying to educate the users. Normally you don't go with enforce immediately, you go with test. So the people send the emails addresses and the email contents, they get acclimatized to the new rules in the organization. In our case here, we are gonna choose enforce. That's okay. I'm gonna click save. Alright, so here we have our custom DLP policy. So we are gonna double click that. Comes in the back. So you can see now that you have this new link here called rules. So we have the policy. Now we're gonna set the rules of this policy. So on the rules is it is like an algorithm. So it's gonna be if this, then that, except otherwise. So that's always that sort of behavior. So we are gonna create a new rule. So we have a few predefined ones, but if I create a new rule, it's gonna be good because you can see how many options we have. Again, it's come here behind the other window. I'm gonna bring here. So we're gonna call this rule emails. Let's see, credit card contents outside organization. So you just follow the wizard here. So you're gonna apply this rule if, then we expand here, if the recipient is actually if the recipient is located outside the organization, for example. That's a very simple rule. So if the recipient is outside the organization, you do something. So you're gonna do a generate incident report, or forward a message to somebody, or apply a disclaimer. So what we're gonna do is if you are sending credit card details to people outside the organization, we are gonna act on that. So we already covered the rule for outside the organization. Now we need to add another rule for the credit card content. So I'm gonna click here, more options, and then we are gonna add another one, and then you come to apply this rule if the message contains sensitive information. And then you're gonna bring this sensitive information types, which is something really interesting that Microsoft is doing to protect your data. So I'm gonna open up here, and you're gonna see the real value that Microsoft applies on the data protection. So you see here, uh, you have all sorts of sensitive types that comes from bank routing number, Argentina, national identity, Brazil. There's some Brazil rules here like CPF number, which is like the SSN number. Uh, have the Canadians driver's license, German driver's license, French passport number. So we have a whole bunch of sensitive information types that we're gonna apply to a policy, and then Office 365 has an engine that is able to match the content of the message with the actual information type. So we're gonna choose here credit card numbers. Here it is. So I'm select this guy here and click OK. And here you see a column with minimal count, maximum count. So it means that you can modify that. So that rule only is going to be triggered if the number of credit cards in the message it happens in between minimum and maximum. So if I put any, it means that if I have at least one sensitive type detected in the message, Office 365 will alert me, and it's gonna pick that up. Alright, so we have the rule, and we're gonna do the following if the rule is matched. You come here, there is a whole bunch of things that you can do with the message. So if the message is sent to somebody outside the organization and it contains a credit card number in it, you can block the message, you can apply a disclaimer, you can modify the security, you can notify the sender with a policy tip. I'm gonna show you later What the policy tip is, you can generate an instant report and send to somebody from the security team. So let's do this. We're gonna send a message to Dennis, and then we're gonna include the content of the message. And additionally to that, I'm gonna um, notify the recipient with a message. I think I'm gonna do block the message. Let's see. I'm looking for here the option to modify the properties. No, it's not this one. I'm just trying to see where it is. Oh, here it is. Notify the sender with policy tip. So what this is telling me is that if the message is detected, I'm gonna send a notification email to Dennis, like I said before, and then we are gonna put up a policy tip for the people writing the email, so they know that they are doing something that is not supposed to be done. So I have a few options here: notify the sender, but allow to send, block the message straight away. I like this other option here, which is a very elaborate and very good option, which is you block the message, but allow the sender to override uh, uh, if he provides a business justification for that. So I'm gonna put here like you need to for that. Okay. So here we have our rule. So we're gonna apply this rule if the recipient is located outside the organization and the message contains credit card number. Do the following: generate an instant report and send it to Dennis with this custom content, and notifying the sender, which is the person who's writing the email, with a policy tip. You block the message, but you allow him to send as long as he provides a business justification for that. And that's mainly it. I'm gonna click here on save. This is okay. This is just because if the message is blocked, like if he doesn't provide that justification, the other rules are not gonna be applied. So that's fine. Just click OK. You're gonna click save here again. I'm not gonna save this at the moment because these rules they take a few minutes to get into the process and happen to be activated for the users in general. And I think we're gonna save those minutes in our presentation. But I have created one exactly like what we've done right now. It's called is this one. So we can actually test it straight away. Uh, what's how it's gonna behave. So let's say a user is gonna try to send an email. Let's say Sarah. Oops. It looks like Sarah doesn't have the right password. Okay. So let's go to her mailbox, and we are going to send a message with a rule that we defined. So we're gonna click new, I have handy here some fake details that we're gonna use in our example. So all those that data here, it's obviously it's not a real credit card number, but it matches the credit card rule for the numbering and everything. So it's gonna be picked up in our system. So she's gonna send an email to Janet. So it's everything good here. You do not see any tips, but when she's gonna try to send to somebody outside the organization, you'll see these things here. Those things are called the policy tips that we talked about before. So here we have a credit card number in the message. So what's happening here is Office 365 read that content, processed in the server, and then send it back to your browser and your client. And then now you can see the expression was actually evaluated properly. So you see here the policy tip. It says that this email contains sensitive information. So show more details. Blah blah blah. Though to send this message, you must select override, which is provide a business justification. And then here is the training part. Why this message is sensitive. And then you click here and then you see the explanation. This message contains the credit card number. If, for example, if this was a telephone number that looks like a credit card number, you click on report and then the person who set up the policy, he would put this as a false positive. And then the system over time it learns from the actual user's usage. And that's the key difference between, you remember back then when we created the rule between enforce and test. So you want to keep the users using in test as much as possible to give them time in the system to learn all these peculiarities of your businesses. uh, anyway, he wants to send this, uh, but to send he needs to provide a business justification. So the business justification is because I can. Okay. So he does an override of the policy, and then he chooses, or she chooses to send a message at her own risk, and off it goes. Okay, so what we said is that if somebody sends an email with a sensitive data in the content, we want to notify people about this. And let's have a look now at Dennis' mailbox, because he's supposed to get notified for that. So I'm gonna go to his mailbox. So here we have Dennis's box. We're gonna open his exchange, and here it is, the financial data. So he actually receives a copy, 100% copy of the email sent of the conversation, and we have all the details that this mail was generated by the instant report action. It was sent from Sarah. Here's the subject. Here are the recipients. The severity is low. Yeah, it's a false positive. No, that was pretty sure it was a credit card number. Uh, how many credit card numbers has the message? It has one. How confident you are that the content was actually a real credit card number was 85%. And here is the mail content. So normally the person who receives that sort of information has a a lot of privileges over the network because he basically can inspect everybody's emails message. She can actually, oh, here is a copy of the actual message that was sent as well. So here, now you know how to set up a rule and to protect a sensitive content from leaving your organization. And if it needs to leave, you know what you can do to act on it. All right, great. So let's go back here to our lovely presentation. So, like I said, it doesn't matter if you have all these technologies and methods and methodologies in place if there is no training. So, we're going to talk about two cases that actually happened here. So, one happened here in my hometown, which is in Brisbane, in Australia. We had the G20 summit where the leaders from the 20 more powerful nations came to meet and discuss things in politics and so on. And then it has been discovered that an employee from the Australian Immigration Department sent personal information from those leaders attending the G20 to the organizers of a football competition. So, in short, what happened was uh, things like passport numbers, visa details, addresses, telephone numbers, contact people, sometimes even schedules from people like Barack Obama, from Vladimir Putin, from Angela Merkel, the Chinese president, the Indian prime minister, the Japanese prime minister, the Indonesian president, so the British prime minister, so David Cameron, all those peoples and their data they were exposed because they interesting they got into the a mail chain uh, offering free tickets for the Asian football competition. So it goes to show that a simple rule like that if you have in your mailbox, something like we just did with a credit card number, if somebody could have spent 10 minutes in exchange and set up a rule to don't send passport numbers, there would have there all the situation would have been avoided. And the worst part of it was all those the head of governments, all those guys they were kept in the dark about the whole thing. It just came up out of the woods later, a few months later. It was really a symbolic situation for everybody involved. And the other one was the federal privacy authorities in Australia. They were called in because a central link is like the the social services for the whole country. It has everybody's social numbers and details. They left that information sitting on a suburban train bench. So effectively, somebody from the office he picked up all those people's information. He put it in his bag. He went to pick up a train station, going home, and he picked up the train and he forgot the people's information on the bench. And somebody found, and it was a big thing. He went to the newspapers, and it was so confusing. So all those documents they contain dates of birth, phone numbers, relationship details. Who are your kids, who are your wives, your husbands, home addresses, phone numbers, and that loss was only discovered when a rail worker actually called one of those people from the files who was lost. Again, something very easy to address. Talking technologically, you go there and you set up a policy rule to uh, don't let people print out documents, for example, and not to let them easily accessible to employees depending on their level. Uh, but it doesn't matter if those rules were in place. If they don't have the proper training, uh, they will never follow this through anyway. There is a phrase that defines this very specifically, which is one of the most important keys to something success is having the discipline to do what you know you should do, even when you don't feel like doing it. So this comes after training, after compliance, after a lot of awareness courses. It needs to security and the compliance needs to be something that is part of everybody's daily life to make sure that this is addressed properly. Now, let's have a look how another interesting demo. How can we send encrypted communications? So in this demo, what we're gonna do is we are gonna make sure that when we send an email to somebody, only that person can read that. So in that case, I created a rule before, previous to this presentation, which is called "for your eyes only" content. And those rules are, I'm gonna open up here the rule. I created a rule called encrypt content. Let me see here. Here it is. So if the recipient is located outside the organization and the subject includes a word confidential, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna encrypt the message with Office 365 message encryption. The Office 365 message encryption is a very cool feature, but not uh, commonly remembered by on those presentations that I've been through. So I thought about that. I might as well demonstrate that. So I'm gonna cancel that, and let's go to Sarah's mailbox again, and I'm gonna write a message. So I'm gonna write a message to. I have two simple accounts here. I have one which is an Outlook.com account, and another account which is a Gmail account. Okay, and I'm gonna put here confidential. So it means that the rule is gonna apply in that message, and instead of sending just one content, I'm gonna actually attach a file with lots of customer data. So you see here, so all these are customer data. So all these are fake; they are not true, but they will be picked up in the system. This is also going to demonstrate to you that also data inside files is picked up by the content. Oh, you see here. Yeah, I'm gonna override that. This is a demo. Override this row. Here are the details we talked about. And I'm gonna send. Now I'm going to open that message in Gmail and Outlook. So let's try first. Let's try first Outlook because it's Microsoft product, so it might be easier. So here's my fake Outlook account. I'm gonna sign in. Oops, the password is all right. So I'm gonna delete one because this is the test I was doing before. So this is the message that was sent by Sarah. So you see here something really interesting happen. You don't actually see the message content. You see actually a page, a HTML page, and instructions for you on how to read the message, which are here. So basically says you need to download that file and then you need to open that specific file. So if you have a Microsoft product on an Exchange client or everything from related to the Microsoft ecosystem, you can read the message by confirming your signing details. Oh, I guess I need to open a new session because Sarah, she's still here. Let me close this. Okay, so I open a new browser session. I'm going to log in again. I'm going to open the message. So the instructions tells me to download this file and open that file. And then the content will only show up to me if my credentials are okay, which means if that message is forwarded to somebody else, which is not my Outlook.com account, that person is not going to be able to read the message because there is a trust between the relationship between Office 365 and the Exchange account, and the Outlook.com account. So now you can see the message. So this message is being decrypted and displayed by the Office 365 server. So here you can have access to the content. You see here the message. You see here the file. You can download the file, and now you can access the content. But if I forward that email message to somebody else who was not intended to, that person was not going to be able to read the content. Now, interesting thing is what happens if your customer is a Gmail account, which is like not Microsoft ecosystem, like could be a Yahoo.com account or something else account. Let's put in here. So Gmail doesn't have a trust relationship with Office 365. So how do we overcome that? It's a very smart way. I'm going to show you. They are going to pair um, a number and a key. So let's see. Here's the message. I'm gonna open with Firefox. So you see here, if I try to sign in, it's not going to work. So I'm gonna use a one-time passcode. So my Office 365 tenant sent another email to my account. Here it is, called a one-time passcode. I'm gonna click that, and then I have this passcode here, and that's gonna expire in 15 minutes. So I have 15 minutes to actually get that number, come back here and match it. So if the reference codes match with the passcode that I just received, then I should be able to read the email content. And here is again, if that email is forwarded to another Gmail account, that person is not going to be able to read the content. Alright, so there was our two demos. Now we are getting closer to the end of our session, so I just want to talk about that what's coming, right? So we saw that 2014 was a pivotal year in the data leakage protection, the whole security culture. In Gartner is projecting that by 2018, 50% of the organizations will use security services, companies that specialized in data protection, security risk management, and security infrastructure, despite them being in the cloud or on premise or anything else. Because there is a need uh, to make sure that all those policies are applied and all those policies are in place and the training being done and delivered. Because as you see, only the technology doesn't cover all the angles. You need to have the training and you need to have the engagement. Um, so worldwide, the spending on information security will reach, I think, 71 billion in 2015. That's what I saw this year, about 71 or 75 billion dollars, and especially with the increasing adoption of mobile and cloud and social and information, that will drive the use of new security technologies and services throughout 2016. So from that angle, the big thing happened in 2014 was the popularization of the security threats. Let's put it this way. That was driven by an easy availability of malware and infrastructure that can be used to launch advanced targets attacks. This forced this push to an increased awareness amongst organizations all over the world that would have traditionally treated security as an IT function and a cost center, but nowadays they need to really pay attention how security will play out in their own company. And I think by 2015, roughly 10% of overall IT security enterprise will be in the cloud. So the uptake is getting there. The uptake is coming. So the people are getting aware, and they are not so afraid to go to the cloud as they were before. Another topic that we are going to hear a lot is regulatory uh, compliance. So this has been a major driving factor to make sure that companies spend in security over the last, I don't know, 5 years. And people from Gartner, they expect that it's going to just accelerate from now on. And broader data privacy legislation like the Patriot Act or the Australia Privacy Act. So those things are expected to sustain that sort of spending in security in the years to come. Now, what's come in data protection roadmap for this year and the next year? So, so next steps is something that is already moving, is in motion as we speak. So, is archiving for non-Microsoft data. So, all those things that we saw that it covers emails and OneDrive for businesses and Exchange. Now is going to include social data. So what your employees put on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. So your company now we have tools that go there and grab that sort of information that belongs to the company, but are spread out in social media. Instant messaging, whatever people talk on Google Talk or Yahoo Messenger, etc. uh, documents that are stored outside Office 365, files that people put on Box or Dropbox. Integration with other partners like Salesforce and Bloomberg products, SMS, BlackBerry, Mobile Guard. So these are not so big in the market, but we are going to have tools that are going to cover that and make sure that that data is compliant and is not flying under the radar in the company's policies. So in exchange, a little bit of roadmap. 2016, we're gonna have message encryption with bring your own key configurations. So you're gonna be able to set up your own company keys to encrypt and decrypt messages. For SharePoint, we already see the data loss prevention is enabled in SharePoint Online and OneDrive for businesses. In collaboration and search, 2016, we're gonna see Office 365 groups, which is a big thing. It was a big thing this year. It's gonna have e-discovery, data loss prevention, and other controls. And archiving and retention, all this already is happening this year. So Compliance Center was just released. Public folders now they have retention policies and e-discovery. Yammer was moved to Office 365 now, so archiving and retention it's already been enabled. And organizational and filtering arrives for Exchange e-discovery. E-discovery is a really good subject. We wish we could talk about this at some point in the future. It's a really fascinating topic. And when it's going to be the next roadmap update? I think it's going to be mid 2016. If you had a chance to go to the Microsoft Ignite conference in Chicago on 2016 May 9th, that's going to be the next big launch, and we're going to see what's come next for Office 365. Now, just to close this topic, let's talk about who is responsible for a data breach when it happens. So, uh, uh, just to save us a little bit of time, I'm going to skip what that graphic is talking about here, but I'm going to resume what the story is. I guess the summary for this is that the response to a data breach is a honest, prompt, compassionate, informative, and interactive. So, uh, answering the question of when a data breach happened, what should I do? And the interactive part of the response should have security options that recognize different customers with different risk sensitive profiles. So companies should invest in education for the customers and employees in security best practices and what to do when a data breach happens because at some point it will happen. So as long as the right measures are in place, the data is saved and addressed properly. All right, so I guess we are coming to the end of our presentation. So if you want to learn more, I have these two links in here that they're very updated. They have very constant content coming through. It is the best way to get to be informed on this topic. And thank you very much for you guys. I know that's a hard topic, is a dry topic, but I hope you guys were able to address and to learn something from this session. Stay tuned for more great sessions, and a big thank you to all the organizers. Catch you later, guys. Bye bye.